My fiancé cheated with my brother, caught them and gave them what they deserved. All right, so here's how it all went down. It was just a regular Thursday. I remember that clearly. I had just finished a long day at work, and all I could think about was getting home, chilling out, and maybe watching some TV. You know, normal stuff. But man, I had no clue what I was about to walk into. If I had known, I probably would have stayed late at work or something, or maybe gone anywhere else, because nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I opened that door. So I get home, right? And the first thing I notice is that it's super quiet, which is odd because Claire's car was in the driveway. Usually she's playing some music or has the TV on in the background while she's cooking or something, so right away it felt weird. My gut was telling me something was off, but I was tired and just wanted to relax, so I ignored it. Big mistake. I open the door, throw my keys on the counter, and as I walk into the living room, I freeze. I legit stop dead in my tracks. There, right on the couch where Claire and I used to sit together every evening, is my brother Marcus and Claire. And they're not just sitting there. They're making out, full on, like I didn't even exist. My heart just dropped into my stomach. You ever get that feeling where your brain can't even process what it's seeing? Like it takes a second for reality to hit, because you're just standing there trying to figure out if maybe you're imagining it? Yeah, that was me in that moment. I must have stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably just a few seconds, trying to make sense of the absolute nightmare I had just walked into. But then the rage hit. I snapped out of it, and before I knew what I was doing, I rushed over to the couch and grabbed Marcus by his shirt. I yanked him off of Claire, and my first instinct was to punch him right there. I was shaking with anger. My fist was balled up so tight I thought I'd break my own hand. But then Claire, she starts screaming, begging me not to hit him. Can you believe that? She was more worried about him than me. Like, who cares that her fiancé, the guy she promised to spend the rest of her life with, just caught her cheating? No, her first thought was to protect Marcus. That just pissed me off even more. And then she says it, the words that will forever be burned into my brain. We've been thinking of a way to tell you for a while now. This isn't the first time we've been together. I swear it felt like the ground opened up beneath me, like I was free falling into some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. She continued, please don't hate us, but we love each other. Love each other? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was so blindsided, I couldn't even respond right away. My whole world was collapsing in front of me. My fiancé and my brother, my own flesh and blood, and then she had the audacity to say, if you hurt him, you hurt me. That was it. Something inside me just broke. All the anger, all the shock, it just drained out of me. I felt hollow. I let go of Marcus and I just stood there, staring at both of them, tears welling up in my eyes. I didn't know what else to do. There were no words for the kind of betrayal I was feeling in that moment. I turned to Claire, barely able to hold myself together, and through the lump in my throat I said, get out. That's all I could manage. I just wanted them both out of my sight. I didn't want to see them ever again. I didn't want to hear their excuses or explanations. They had already said enough. I was done. Marcus tried to say something, maybe to defend himself or whatever, but I cut him off. I said get out, I shouted, my voice cracking with all the emotions I was trying to hold back. Claire started crying like she was the victim in all of this, but I didn't care. I didn't have any sympathy left for her, not anymore. They both left, and as soon as that door shut behind them, I collapsed onto the couch, the same couch I had just ripped them apart on, and I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It felt like my heart had been ripped out and stomped on. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my relationships, was suddenly gone. I don't even know how long I sat there, just staring at the wall, replaying what had just happened over and over in my head. How could I have missed the signs? How long had this been going on? I trusted both of them. Claire and I were supposed to get married. Marcus was supposed to be my best man, for crying out loud. The betrayal was too much. My mind was racing, flipping between anger, sadness, and complete disbelief. It felt like I was drowning in my own thoughts, unable to make sense of any of it. I kept asking myself, how could they do this to me? I picked up my phone at some point, not even sure what I was going to do with it. Call someone? Text Claire and Marcus? Yell at them some more? But I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to reach out to anyone because I didn't want to talk about it. How do you even explain something like that to someone? Hey, my fiancé and my brother just ruined my life. Yeah, not exactly a fun conversation starter. After what felt like forever, I managed to pull myself together enough to get off the couch. I walked around the house in a daze, looking at all the little things that reminded me of Claire. Her shoes by the door, her jacket hanging on the coat rack, the framed picture of us on the mantel. It all felt so meaningless now. I grabbed the picture frame and threw it across the room, shattering the glass. It felt good to break something. At least it was a physical release of all the pent-up anger that was eating me alive inside. By the end of the night, I had packed up everything that reminded me of her. Every trace of her was gone from my house, just like she was gone from my life. But no matter how much stuff I got rid of, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that lingered in every corner of my mind. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind kept replaying the moment I walked in on them, over and over, like some kind of cruel nightmare I couldn't escape. I kept wondering how long it had been going on, why neither of them had the decency to come clean sooner. But most of all, I kept asking myself one question: how the hell am I supposed to move on from this? And honestly, I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that my life as I knew it was over, and I had no idea where to go from here. All right, so after that whole mess of catching Claire and Marcus together, I thought things couldn't get any worse. Turns out, I was completely wrong. You'd think after breaking off the engagement, they would have at least the tiniest bit of shame, right? Nah, they went in the opposite direction. It's like they went full throttle with the relationship, like they didn't even care what they had done or how it affected me. It was honestly mind-blowing. A few weeks after kicking them out, I started hearing through the grapevine that they were dating publicly now. I couldn't believe it. Marcus and Claire, the same people who destroyed my life, were just out there acting like everything was totally fine. What made it worse is how they were all over social media, rubbing it in everyone's face. One day, my cousin texted me a screenshot of one of their posts. Marcus and Claire smiling together at some fancy beach resort, looking all happy and loved up. I felt like I was going to puke. The caption on the post? My better half. Can you imagine that? Better half. The level of disrespect was unreal. I stared at that picture for way too long, just letting the anger build up. It wasn't like I was still in love with Claire. I was done with her the moment I caught them. But seeing them flaunting it like this, like they hadn't just blown up my entire world, it hit different. To make it worse, the comments were all congratulating them. You two look so perfect together. OMG couple goals. Like, are you serious? These people had no idea what had really gone down. It felt like everyone was supporting their little love fest while I was left in the dust. I blocked Claire immediately, thinking that would help. But of course, I forgot to block Marcus. So a few days later, I'm scrolling through my feed, and there he is again. Another post. This time they're at some romantic dinner, all cozy with candles and wine. It was like they were going out of their way to show off. That was it for me. I blocked him too. I didn't need to see that trash every time I opened my phone. After that, I tried to move on. I focused on work, hung out with friends, and just tried to forget about everything. But even when I wasn't thinking about it, people kept bringing it up. It was like no matter where I turned, I couldn't escape this nightmare. Family members would call to check on me, asking how I was doing, and every time they'd eventually circle back to Marcus and Claire. Have you heard from Marcus? How's Claire doing? Are you okay? Like, come on, people, stop acting like they were the victims. I had to fake being okay all the time just so people wouldn't keep asking me the same questions over and over. I didn't want to keep talking about it. But eventually, I couldn't hold it in anymore, so I started telling people the truth about what I was going through. I told my friends everything, about how it felt like I was drowning in betrayal, how angry and hurt I was. They were awesome, honestly. They reached out to Marcus and told him exactly what they thought about him. They weren't going to let him get away with what he did, not without knowing how bad he messed up. I appreciated that, even though it didn't change anything. And as for Claire, I had no idea what she was thinking. She didn't even try to reach out to apologize or explain herself after that night. It's like she had just erased everything we'd been through. I was nothing to her now, just some obstacle she had to get around to be with Marcus. It hurt, but what could I do? Time passed, and while I was hoping this whole thing would burn out, it didn't. Marcus and Claire kept going strong. Months later, they were still together, and my worst fears came true. My parents, who were so mad at them at first, started to soften up. I remember one night when I was over at my parents' house, and my mom brought it up. She was acting all casual, like she was testing the waters. You know, I've been thinking, maybe Marcus and Claire really do love each other. They've been together for a while now. She said it like she was trying to convince herself. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mom, the one who was furious at Marcus, was now making excuses for them? I snapped at her. Love each other? They tore my life apart, and you're just going to act like that's okay now? But she didn't back down. I'm just saying maybe it's time to move on. People make mistakes, James. Maybe we should try to forgive them. I couldn't even respond to that. I just sat there, staring at her like she was a stranger. Forgive them? After everything? It felt like a punch in the gut, like my own family was slowly turning their back on me. My dad didn't say much, but he didn't disagree either, which was even worse. Thanksgiving rolled around, and I really didn't want to go. I knew it was going to be awkward as hell, but my mom begged me to come. She pulled out the guilt card, it's family. We should all be together for the holidays. So, against my better judgment, I went. The moment I walked into the house, I knew I'd made a mistake. There they were, Marcus and Claire, sitting together at the table like nothing had happened. My mom, of course, had conveniently forgotten to tell me they were coming. The dinner was beyond awkward. Every time I glanced over, there they were, holding hands under the table like they were the star couple of some cheesy romance movie. I wanted to puke. My mom kept trying to steer the conversation away from anything that might cause drama, but it wasn't working. The tension was so thick you could feel it. And then, to make it worse, my mom started complimenting Claire. "She's been doing so well at her new job," she said. Like we were all just one big happy family. Marcus chimed in, all proud, talking about how amazing Claire was. I just sat there, clenching my fists under the table, trying not to lose it. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I cut in, "Are we really going to sit here and pretend like everything's fine?" Everyone went silent. My mom gave me this pleading look like, please, not now, but I wasn't having it. Marcus, of course, had to say something. "Look, we know we messed up, but we're trying to move forward. Maybe you should too." That was it. I was done. I stood up and told them I couldn't do this anymore. I wasn't going to sit there and watch them play house while I was expected to just get over it. I left the house without looking back. After that, I stopped going to family events. I couldn't deal with the fake smiles and forced conversations. Marcus and Claire were out there living their best life, while I was left to pick up the pieces. And what made it worse? My own family was slowly starting to act like they were the victims, like I was the one holding onto the past too tightly. It was like a bad dream that I couldn't wake up from, and no matter what I did, it felt like I was the one being left behind. Update 1. Alright, so if you thought things couldn't get more ridiculous after Thanksgiving, trust me, it only got worse. After that awkward dinner, I basically cut off any real contact with Marcus and Claire. I wasn't going to family gatherings, and I avoided them like the plague. I figured, okay, if I distance myself, I can start to heal. But nope, that wasn't going to happen. Not with the way my family was acting. A few months went by, and I was doing my best to rebuild my life. I focused on work, started going to the gym more, tried to hang out with friends. Just anything to get my mind off the betrayal. And for a little while, it was working. I wasn't checking their social media, I wasn't asking about them, and I told everyone around me that I didn't want to hear anything about Marcus or Claire. I figured, out of sight, out of mind, right? But then, one random afternoon, I got hit with the news I never wanted to hear. I was just sitting at home, scrolling through my phone, and suddenly my family group chat starts blowing up. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, because usually it's just my mom sending dumb pictures or my uncle making plans for some BBQ. But then, I see Marcus's name pop up. And before I could even stop myself, I clicked on the chat. There it was. Marcus had dropped a bomb in the group chat. Not literally, but you know what I mean. He and Claire were moving in together. Not only that, but they were excited to start this new chapter of their lives. I swear my blood pressure must have skyrocketed at that moment. It wasn't just the fact that they were moving in together that hit me, it was the reactions. I scrolled through the messages, and one by one my family members were congratulating them. My mom, she was so happy for them, and said she couldn't wait to visit their new place. My dad? He said he was proud of them for taking the next step. Even my cousin, who had been on my side before, sent a "Congrats, you guys deserve it" message. Deserve it? How could they deserve anything after what they did to me? I couldn't help myself. I started typing furiously in the chat. I told them all exactly what I thought, asking if they had completely forgotten what Marcus and Claire had done. I reminded them how they betrayed me, how they ruined my engagement, and now everyone was acting like it was no big deal. I let it all out. The chat went dead silent after that. I could imagine everyone reading my messages, sitting there in awkward silence, probably thinking, well, that's uncomfortable. My mom, of course, tried to calm things down, sending some message about how we're still family and it's time to move on. But I wasn't having it. I told them flat out that I wasn't going to support Marcus and Claire's relationship, not after everything that happened. Things got heated pretty fast after that. Some family members started jumping in, telling me to let go of the past, that everyone makes mistakes, and that I was being too harsh. It felt like I was the one in the wrong, like somehow I was the bad guy for not being okay with all of this. My uncle even said, if they're happy, isn't that what matters most? That was the final straw for me. I told them, if their happiness comes from stabbing me in the back, then no, I don't care about their happiness. After that, I left the group chat. I didn't want to hear from anyone anymore. It was clear that my family had made their choice, and it wasn't me. A couple days later, my mom called me. I didn't answer the first few times because I knew she was going to try and smooth things over, but eventually I picked up. She immediately launched into this whole speech about how she understood how hurt I was, but that Marcus was still my brother, and we needed to find a way to move forward as a family. I wasn't even mad anymore. I was just tired. I told her flat out, "Look, I'm not going to pretend like I'm okay with Marcus and Claire. I don't care how serious they are. I don't care if they get married tomorrow. They betrayed me, and I'm not going to support their relationship." She sighed like she was disappointed in me, but I wasn't going to let her guilt me into anything. She started going on about how holding on to grudges wasn't healthy, and how I needed to find a way to forgive them for my own sake. I cut her off and told her, "Mom, I'm not holding a grudge. I just know my worth. And if my own brother and fiancé couldn't respect me enough not to sneak around behind my back, then they don't deserve my forgiveness." She was quiet after that, and we ended the call on an awkward note. I knew she wasn't going to drop it, but I also knew I wasn't going to change my mind. It wasn't about being angry anymore. It was about respecting myself enough to not let people who betrayed me walk all over me. But here's where it gets even more ridiculous. A few weeks after that phone call, I get this formal-looking letter in the mail. I thought it was some boring bill or whatever, but when I opened it, my heart dropped. It was a wedding invitation. Marcus and Claire were getting married. And guess what? The invitation wasn't just addressed to me, it was addressed to me as the best man. I couldn't believe the nerve of them. They really thought I'd stand next to Marcus on his wedding day? They thought I'd be okay with standing there, watching him marry the woman who was supposed to be my wife? It was like a slap in the face. I tossed the invitation in the trash and didn't even bother responding. But of course, the wedding drama didn't end there. A few days later, Marcus called me. He sounded all cheerful, like nothing had ever happened between us. He asked if I got the invitation and if I was excited for the wedding. I kept my voice calm, but inside I was boiling. I told him, "I'm not coming to your wedding, and you should have known that before you even sent the invitation." He tried to reason with me, saying how he wanted me to be there, how it would mean so much to him if I was the best man. He said something about how we were brothers and that brothers should always have each other's backs. I laughed. I couldn't help it. I told him, "You had my back, huh? Is that what you were doing when you were sneaking around with Claire behind my back? Was that having my back?" Marcus went silent after that. He knew he had no defense, no excuse. He mumbled something about how he was sorry, but I cut him off. I told him, "I'm not coming to your wedding, Marcus, and if you ever cared about me at all, you wouldn't ask me to." And with that, I hung up the phone. The wedding was in a few months, but I already knew I wasn't going. It didn't matter what my family said or how much they pressured me. I wasn't going to stand there and pretend like everything was okay because it wasn't. And honestly, I didn't care if they called me petty or stubborn. At least I knew I still had my self-respect. Update 2. Alright, so after the whole wedding invite fiasco, I thought maybe Marcus and Claire would finally get the message that I wasn't going to be a part of their little fairy tale. I ignored any other attempts they made to talk to me, and honestly, I was doing okay with just keeping my distance. I mean, it still sucked, but I was figuring out how to live without all the family drama weighing me down. But of course, that peace didn't last long. About a month after Marcus tried to convince me to be his best man, I got a call from my mom. I wasn't planning to answer because, honestly, every time she called, it was just more pressure about forgiveness and family. But something told me this one was important, so I picked up. She didn't even waste time with small talk. "James, you're coming to the wedding, right?" I couldn't help but laugh. It was like she didn't even hear me the last 100 times I said no. "Mom, I've told you already, I'm not going to the wedding. I don't know why you're still asking." She sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. "James, it's important. You need to be there, it's family, it's your brother's wedding." I could feel my patience slipping. "You know what else is important, Mom? Respect, loyalty, not betraying your own brother." There was silence on the other end for a second, and then she hit me with the guilt trip. "We just want everyone to be together. Marcus feels bad. Claire does too. They've tried to reach out. Can't you just come? For us?" I was so tired of hearing that same line. They hadn't reached out in any meaningful way. All they did was send me an invitation like that would magically erase everything they did. "No, I can't just come for you. You know exactly why I'm not going. If you guys want to support Marcus and Claire, fine, that's your choice. But don't expect me to just act like everything's okay." She started crying, which, I won't lie, made me feel like crap for a second. My mom's not a bad person, she just doesn't get it. I just don't understand why you can't forgive them. It's been months. They love each other. It wasn't right, but they didn't mean to hurt you. I had to bite my tongue to stop from yelling. They did hurt me, though. They knew exactly what they were doing. And if they really loved each other so much, why didn't they just break it off with me first? Why sneak around behind my back? She didn't have an answer for that. The conversation went in circles for a few more minutes, with her trying to convince me to come and me standing firm. Eventually, she gave up, and we hung up, both frustrated. I thought that was the end of it. But a few days later, my dad called. Now my dad's not one for long conversations or emotional talks, so when he called, I knew something was up. I answered, and his tone was different from my mom's, more serious. "James," he started, "we need to talk about this wedding thing." I rolled my eyes, already knowing where this was headed. "Dad, I'm not coming. I don't know why everyone keeps trying to change my mind." He was quiet for a second, and then he said, "Look, I get it. What Marcus did was wrong, but we're family. At the end of the day, that's what matters." I groaned internally. "Dad, you keep saying family." But Marcus wasn't thinking about family when he went behind my back with Claire. Why is it on me to be the bigger person here? Why can't anyone see it from my side? "I do see it from your side," he said, his voice softer than I expected. "I know you're hurt, and you've got every right to be. But holding on to all this anger, it's only going to hurt you in the long run. Trust me, I've seen it happen." I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I got where he was coming from. I didn't want to be bitter forever. But on the other hand, I wasn't just going to roll over and act like everything was fine. "Dad, it's not about holding on to anger. It's about not letting people walk all over me. If I go to that wedding, it's like saying what they did was okay. And it wasn't." He didn't push back after that. He just sighed and said, "I understand. I won't ask you again. Ask you." It should have felt like a victory, but instead, I just felt empty. I wanted my family to have my back, not just tolerate my feelings. But clearly, they were more interested in keeping the peace than actually standing up for me. Fast forward to the week before the wedding. I had gone completely radio silent with most of my family. I knew they were probably all talking about me behind my back, wondering why I couldn't just get over it. But I didn't care. I had made my decision, and I was sticking to it. Then, I get a text from Marcus. It was the first time he had reached out to me since the whole thing started, and honestly, I wasn't sure I even wanted to read it. But curiosity got the best of me, so I opened it. "Hey man, I know things are messed up between us, but I really want you at the wedding. It wouldn't be the same without you. Can we please talk?" I stared at the message for a while, debating whether to respond or just block his number. Part of me wanted to tell him off, to remind him of all the pain he caused. But another part of me, the exhausted part, just didn't want to deal with it anymore. In the end, I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to open that door again. Not after everything he put me through. The day of the wedding came and went. I spent it alone, keeping myself busy with anything I could think of to avoid thinking about what was happening. I knew my family was all there, celebrating, acting like everything was perfect. I wondered if anyone even mentioned me, or if they were too wrapped up in their new happy couple. Later that night, I got a message from my mom. It was just one sentence. "I wish you had been here." I didn't respond. What was there to say? Over the next few days, I tried not to think about it too much. I focused on work, on getting through each day without letting the anger consume me. But the truth is, it was still there, simmering under the surface. It wasn't just about Marcus and Claire anymore. It was about the fact that my family had chosen to move forward without me. They wanted me to be okay with everything, to forgive and forget, but they didn't seem to care about what it was doing to me. And that's when I realized I wasn't just angry at Marcus and Claire. I was angry at my whole family for making me feel like I was the problem, for acting like I was the one being unreasonable, for not standing by me when I needed them the most. That was the real betrayal. Update 3. So here's where things really took a turn. Up until now, I'd been trying to keep my distance, let things go, focus on moving on and all that. But after everything my ex-fiancé Claire and my brother Marcus put me through, there was a part of me that just couldn't let it slide. I'm not saying it was the healthiest thing to do, but after being stabbed in the back, I felt like I deserved a little payback. And honestly, it wasn't even that hard to pull off. I should probably back up a bit. So, Claire worked at a company where I had some connections. I never really thought about it much while we were together because why would I? But after everything went down, I started thinking about how much she had hurt me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't going to let her just skate by and live her happy little life while I was left picking up the pieces of mine. Marcus too. Both of them needed to face some consequences, and it wasn't like karma was doing its job anytime soon. Claire's job was something she loved to brag about. She was always talking about her important projects and how much the company relied on her. I never cared much before, but after all this, I remembered some of the things she had told me. Things about her boss, her coworkers, even some shady stuff that she and her team had done to cut corners on projects. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now I had something to work with. Through my connections, I managed to get some of this info into the right hands. I didn't go into it thinking it would actually work. I figured maybe she'd get a slap on the wrist or something, but turns out her company took this stuff very seriously. A few weeks later, I heard through the grapevine that Claire had been let go. Apparently, the company was cleaning house, and she was one of the people they decided they didn't need anymore. When I found out, I couldn't help but smile. I mean, she deserved it, right? All that bragging about her perfect job, and now she had nothing. But what really got me was that she didn't even see it coming. She posted some nonsense on social media about taking a break to focus on herself, or whatever. But I knew the truth. And as for Marcus, well, I wasn't going to let him off the hook either. Marcus had a pretty cushy job at a place that, coincidentally, also had ties to some of the people I knew. I never thought I'd use my connections like this, but after what he did, it felt like justice. I found out through a mutual friend that Marcus had been slacking at work, missing deadlines, and just being generally lazy. He was always good at talking his way out of things, but this time I made sure his boss got the full picture. I dropped a few hints in the right ears, just enough to get people paying attention to Marcus's behavior. And it worked. They started keeping a closer eye on him, and it didn't take long for him to mess up big time. A project he was working on fell apart because of his negligence, and boom, he was out. Fired. When I found out, I felt this strange mix of satisfaction and disbelief. It wasn't like I had planned this all out in some genius mastermind way, but it all came together better than I could have imagined. And the best part? They didn't know it was me. To them, it probably looked like life was just kicking them when they were down. But I knew the truth. I had made sure they felt just a fraction of the pain they put me through. But I didn't stop there. See, after they both lost their jobs, they were still living in the apartment that Claire and I had originally planned to move into together. I had put down a lot of the money for that place, and when things fell apart, I let it go because, honestly, I didn't want to deal with it. But now it felt like the perfect way to finish things off. Turns out, Claire and Marcus were barely scraping by after losing their jobs. They were behind on rent, and the landlord was getting impatient. So I called in a favor from someone I knew at the property management company. Nothing shady, just a little nudge to make sure the landlord knew exactly who was responsible for the lease and that they were way behind on payments. A few weeks later, they were evicted. Homeless. I know, it sounds harsh, but after everything, I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. They had each other, didn't they? They could figure it out together. That's what they wanted, after all, each other. And now they had nothing else. No job, no home, no support from the family that they had so easily betrayed. And speaking of family, when they found out what happened, let's just say there wasn't a lot of sympathy to go around. My parents tried to act all concerned at first, but even they couldn't ignore how much Marcus and Claire had screwed things up. My mom, who had been all about forgiving and moving forward, couldn't keep pretending like everything was okay when they were calling her, asking for money and a place to stay. She called me one day, trying to get my take on the whole situation. "James, did you hear what happened to Marcus and Claire? They're really struggling." I played dumb. "Oh, really? What happened?" "They lost their jobs, and now they're being evicted. They asked if they could stay with us for a while." I almost laughed. The idea of them crawling back asking for help after everything? It was too perfect. "And what did you say?" I asked, knowing full well my mom wasn't about to let them move back in. She sighed. "I don't know what to do. Your father's against it, but I feel like we should help." I didn't even hesitate. "Mom, they made their bed. Let them lie in it." There was a long pause. I could tell she didn't like hearing that, but deep down, she knew I was right. After a few moments, she finally said, "You're right. I wish things had turned out differently." I didn't. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my life again. They had taken so much from me, my relationship, my trust, my family's support, but I wasn't going to let them take anything else. In the end, Marcus and Claire were left with nothing but each other, which, if you ask me, is exactly what they deserved. And as for me, I walked away with my head held high, knowing that sometimes karma needs a little push in the right direction. It might not have been the cleanest or most mature way to handle things, but after everything they put me through, I have no regrets. They got what was coming to them, and now I can finally move on. My parents ignored and forgot about me on their wedding, so I exposed them and they got mad. I know this seems like a weird situation, but I just feel so angry and depressed that I feel the need to vent even if no one is listening. So I, 17F, was recently forgotten about on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad, 50M, proposed to my mother, 49F, on their anniversary, which they have always celebrated on the date my mother found out she was pregnant with my eldest sister, even if they were already together before, everyone, including me, was elated and celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding very early on a small event in Hawaii, with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister, 25F, to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother, 22M, to be his groomsman. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time with each other shopping and socializing, so they had a very close bond, and the same goes for my father and brother. They always played football together and messed around with cars. My father even trained my brother's team for a while in middle school. That had always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself on my family's hobbies and groups that they had within our home, but was always rebuffed. Maybe they could sense that my interest on their activities wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had sis and dad had bro. My parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer to each other than they ever were to me, leaving me very lonely and isolated in my own home. During the preparation for the wedding, initially it was suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, 3F, so that idea was quickly tossed away. Later on, my maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or do a little bit of a speech during the ceremony, but both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision, their literal words. I was still okay with all of this, even though it hurt to know I would be the only member of the family to not actually be part of the wedding party or have any role at all on the day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings got more and more caught up on all the wedding planning. I noticed my mom didn't invite me dress shopping, and that whenever they would have discussions about the venue or the event, I was left out, so I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved at all and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me something, anything, about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago, the end of August. The day before the departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She got confused for a second and then snapped at me for not being prepared. I then asked her if I even had a ticket, and her face went pale. Yep, they hadn't even bought me a ticket, and I'm not even sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there. Even though I was the only person in my family without a stable income, I work as a part-time babysitter, my parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and the couple other friends that were attending the wedding but had forgotten me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it, and that they can just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline, but I just replied by asking her, then what? Do I even have a dress for the ceremony? She went with sis to buy hers and all the other female guests months ago, but I wasn't included. That's when my father came in and just told me to suck it up and that I've never been a girly girl so I could just wear whatever. I got mad at this because even though I'm not the most feminine girl in the planet, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding, and it was about the fact that I was excluded for literally everything that had been going on for months. We all got into a fight with them, calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself small intentionally so they would forget me, like that is a valid excuse for ignoring a child. They ended up telling me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing altogether, to which I responded with a defiant fine, and went to my room. Next morning, they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they all posted loads of pictures on Insta and Facebook about how perfect and magical that whole week was being. People realized quickly that I wasn't in any of the photos and asked my parents why, to which they replied that unfortunately I had caught COVID before the trip and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel back for me, but it was. I decided to take a COVID test and published a picture of myself holding the negative test and captioned it, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone that had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture, and for good measure, also every person invited to it. I also wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me, until the day before parting, and how they actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side, and others couldn't believe it, and thought there must be something more to the story than what I was saying. But one thing is for certain, I completely ruined my parents' wedding, and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first, I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up on my own, but after a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later, when they came back, them furiously attacking me for my immature actions and my spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly, and I began to feel awful. I hate my family, and I hate being in this house, but I'm a minor and can't leave just yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better, though, and now I feel so depressed that I'm second-guessing everything I did, from not speaking up before to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty for the lack of connection between all of my family and me, and maybe I could have done more. So am I the a-hole for ruining my parents' wedding when they forgot about me? Update 1. Hi everyone. I wanted to write an update earlier, but I'm still kind of a mess at the moment. But I figured since my post had such an overwhelming response and so many people commented and sent me messages that I should write about the latest developments. First of all, let me start by thanking all that commented on my post and shared their own experiences or points of view on my situation. Thank you so much. A few days ago, I could barely find the energy to get out of bed, and my family's comments had made me really believe that I was guilty for all that had passed. But after seeing the responses to my post and all the support you guys were giving me, I felt somewhat reaffirmed in my actions and feelings towards my family. I'm still fighting the feelings of guilt and depression, but whenever I start to spiral, I think on how much this community of strangers has had my back, and I try to calm myself down with your words. Thanks to your input and advice, I finally decided to call my grandma and tell her the full story. Just to clarify a point before going on, I said this in the comments, but I feel like I should put it here also. My grandma, 77F, did not attend the wedding. She lives several states away and has mobility issues, so she doesn't travel anymore. We went to visit her around Easter, and that's when she commented that I might read a poem at the ceremony, but that was the last time I saw her in person before all this. She's always been very loving to me, and has called out my parents in the past for their favoritism, but it's hard for her to play a more active role in my upbringing since she lives so far, and I'm always worried about bothering her due to her age and health condition. She had a minor stroke a few years back and is now back to normal, but I still worry. Anyway, I called her and laid out everything that had happened with the wedding and how my parents didn't even buy me a ticket to go with them. She came to the same conclusion that most commenters did when I told her that it was simply impossible, that they had forgotten, and that they did it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, laying out how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and most importantly, about my need to get out. She was extremely sweet and comforting to me, and told me that I had nothing else to worry about because she had my back 100% and told me to take it easy, but make plans for my future, and that she'd help me. After that conversation, which lasted about 2 hours, I felt better, and I decided to listen to her and start moving to figure something out for the next school year. I have a friend who is going to lease a studio next to our future campus. She has a great relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent, so that's why she decided to move out. I asked her if I could move in with her temporarily, and that I would pay her rent as soon as I got a job. She immediately accepted and told me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better position, and we had a good cry together when I told her all about my parents' wedding incident. So this all happened a couple days ago, and I was planning on doing the update then, but my grandma called my parents and my siblings to lecture them about how they were treating me. My brother just sent me a text afterwards with a half-hearted apologize, saying that he didn't know I wasn't included, and that he just thought I wouldn't have fun on the trip, and then I posted the pic just to create drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me and told me that I kept trying to make public my own problems and pinning them on my family when they are all innocent. It has been weird with my parents ever since they came back from the trip, and at first they berated me and were furious with me, and after that, we've just been ignoring each other. After my grandma called them, they came into my room telling me that if I wanted to put this whole issue to rest, I should shut up about it, and that this could all had already blown over if only I had kept my mouth shut. I just asked them to leave my room, and then I called my grandma again to tell her what had gone down. She then told me that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come down to see me. This was something that I was actually scared about because my grandma's health is not the best, and this kind of effort is a lot for her, and I know how complicated it is for her to get on a plane, so I tried to dissuade her from coming and told her everything would be okay. But she wouldn't listen, and told me that she was long overdue a conversation with my parents and that she wanted to see me. I'm stressed for her, and I feel again like I forced her to take a long, uncomfortable trip because of me, and that maybe I should have dealt with this myself. I do want to see her, and I wish for nothing more than to hug her right now, but I'm worried about her. At least my uncle, Mom's older brother, is coming with her, but I hope she doesn't exhaust herself or nothing happens to her because that would break me. They arrive tomorrow and have not informed my parents of their trip. My grandma asked me to keep it until she gets here. I hope she's able to make my parents see the mistake in their actions, or at the very least, help me break the news to them that I'm moving out very soon, and I plan on being no contact with them. I don't know, I'm worried about her having to do so much for me and bothering her, but I also appreciate and love her so much for doing all this for me. Update 2. Hello, sorry for not having re-updated sooner or commented. As you can imagine if you've seen my last posts, it's been a busy week to say the least. There's been a lot of people messaging me and commenting on the post, and I haven't had time to answer to no one until today, and I'm sorry for that. You all have been so helpful and caring for me and my story, and it's been truly eye-opening and terrifying to see how many people have gone through similar stories of neglect and abuse, and I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to send some kind words to this internet stranger. This update will be long, so sorry about that. I'm just going to continue where I left off. So my grandma called me to tell me she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was very stressed about it because my grandma has a very hard time traveling, so for her to take this trip meant that she would be under enormous stress, and I felt responsible for her since I was the one that called her. She arrived early Monday morning with my uncle, and I went to get her at the airport. Angel, it was a very intense and emotional moment, and as soon as I saw her, I ran to her arms and broke down sobbing. I don't even know if I was able to tell her anything at that moment because of how hard I was crying and I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming, for being so good to me, for having my back. I'm sorry to have made you take this trip. I feel awful at home. I don't know if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? I truly was hit with all of this, plus the guilt and the anxiety all at once when I saw her, but she held me tight in her arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. My uncle hugged us as well. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while until my uncle told me we should get going. We grabbed a cab and went to their hotel. My grandma had teary eyes, and I could feel her breathing heavily, which scared me, but she kept hugging me and smiling all the way. She had reserved a double room so I could stay with her for these days, and once they were settled in and I was more calm, we sat down and I poured everything out for them. The years of neglect and the emotional abuse, how I was feeling miserable after the trip, but also for years now, how my parents have been trying to make me feel guilty for all of this that has happened, how I was scared about my future, but my end. One priority at the moment now was to move out of that house, even at the expense of my schoolwork, how I have made arrangements to move in with my friend, and I was looking for a job, and I told them about this post, and how some people thought I might be an affair child, and that I was beginning to question that as well. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both really affected by what I was saying, but they kept comforting me and making me feel safe to open up to them. After I unloaded all my concerns with them, my grandma reassured me that I had nothing to worry about anymore and that she would be here for me always. First of all, she reassured me that I was not an affair child and that both my parents were thrilled when my mother got pregnant with me and that she knew the ultimate deal breaker for my mom was cheating and she believed it was the same for my father. Apparently, the favoritism began showing when I was around 3 to 4 years old, when my parents were constantly complaining about having a young kid in the house, and they were bothered because they could take my older siblings to their stuff, but not me, and I was also very shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they had no patience with and made me very different from my siblings. She told me that she knew that my parents had saved more than enough for my college. They're really well off, so that had never been a concern for me until now, thinking they might pull the funds away from me for my education. But that if they tried to not pay for my schooling, she would take care of it, and that she just wouldn't let me drop out because of money concerns. She also told me she would help me with rent and an allowance to move out. She was very generous, and I thanked her for it all. But I also told her that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I never realized how privileged I had been economically all my life. For all their faults, my parents have pampered me, money-wise, all my life. I went to private school. I have a rather large monthly allowance. I've had a card for years now, and they have never objected to any of my expenses. Seeing the stories here, I realized how good I've had it so far and how being dependable on them all my life made me so exposed to losing everything, and I want to be independent now, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel like I need to learn to stand up on my own. Writing this, and having just read all the stories of people in truly awful situations, Makes me feel like I've been a spoiled brat all my life, TBH. She insisted on me accepting my help until I don't need it anymore, and I accepted that, but I'll still will look for a job and try to make it out on my own. We relaxed for a while in the hotel because we were all exhausted from the morning, but in the afternoon we grabbed a cab and went to my house. My parents were extremely surprised to see my grandma and uncle with me when I entered the door, but before they could say anything, my grandma told me to go pack all my essentials while they talked to them. I rushed upstairs, and I could hear my grandma and uncle berating my parents for all that they had put me through. At first, I also heard my parents trying to defend themselves, but eventually they quiet down. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases and my backpack full to the brim with everything important that I had in my room, they were all in the living room. My father was beet red and my mother was sobbing like a child, and when she saw me, she extended her arms on my direction, saying she was sorry, but I just said, "Save it," with the coldest tone I could muster, and my dad said that I didn't have to be jerk, to which both my uncle and grandma told him to shut up. I left the house at that moment and waited for the cab outside. In the hotel, my grandma reassured me that I wouldn't have to go back to them, and that they told her my college tuition was never in question for them, and that they had planned to throw me an extravagant birthday party to make up for the wedding mess, and were going to be giving me a car as an apology for everything, but my grandma was having none of that BS, because it was pretty obvious to her that they were only trying to save face, and they were coming up with these things on the fly, and that a party and a car would not make up for all that they have put me through. Apparently, the moment that broke my mother was when she told her that I had even questioned my paternity, and she started crying then, but my grandma told her that what else could they expect when they had excluded me repeatedly from all family events since I was a child. She told me that she would make sure they made the payments to my school unless I preferred to completely cut ties with them and have her pay until I can pay myself, and I asked her to do that. I felt bad because I feel like it's not her responsibility, but I truly don't want anything else from my parents anymore. And although my grandma is pretty well off herself, she's not as wealthy as my parents, but she reassured me that everything is all right and that everything going to me would be taken away from my mom's inheritance. So the next day we went with my friend, her parents, and grandma to the studio where we were planning to move, and immediately upon arriving, my grandma said, "Absolutely not." I knew from pictures that the studio was very, very small and dirty, but we saw water damage and mold in the bathroom and kitchenette, and there was also rust in the little old appliances. I knew all of this beforehand, but I figured I could live with that, at least for a while. But the thing that the adults pointed out that actually made me and my friend change our minds was the fact that this studio was street level in a bad neighborhood in a building that didn't seem particularly safe and had bullet holes on the walls, which I didn't even know what those were until my friend's dad pointed it out. So grandma and my friend's parents said they would look for an apartment for us in a better location, and they'd help cover the costs. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we realize that with our most likely minimum wage jobs in such a high-demand area, we won't be able to find anything better on our own. So the plan is we're going to look for a 2-bedroom apartment, and me and my friend are going to pay what we had previously planned for the studio, and her parents and my grandma will cover the difference. I know it's still quite spoiled of me to expect that help from my grandma, but after seeing the studio in person, I truly wouldn't have felt safe there. My friend's parents, who were somewhat aware of what I was going through, told me that I could move in with them until we find a nice apartment, to which I'm extremely grateful since grandma is going back in a couple of days, and I've been staying in the hotel with her ever since. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandma spoke about this before coming to me to make sure I had some safe place to stay until we move into the apartment, which is still to be found. I teared up a little as I thanked them, seeing how people were rallying behind me to offer help. Since then, I've been moving some of the stuff I had left at my parents' and setting my space in my friends'. My mom keeps crying and apologizing every time I go back, and even my father has said sorry, but I remain distant and cold towards them. My sister called and said that our mother was a mess and that I was a D*C cake for what I had done, but before she could say anything else, I hanged up the phone and blocked her. I was going to block my brother as well, when I saw that he had sent me a very long message apologizing again and again for all that he has done to me and for not realizing our parents were treating me so poorly. He says he's been doing a lot of self-reflection on the days since Grandma called and realized that he had been in the wrong for assuming I wasn't on the trip because I wouldn't want to go and for just allowing my parents to exclude me for all those years. I sent a brief reply thanking him for his words, but telling him I need space and I was not ready to accept his apology. I feel like he might be genuine because he has never been nasty to me the way my sister has, just aloof towards me. But I also feel like I need to keep him away for the moment. Also, keeping a bridge up with my family feels like the right thing to do right now that everything is so fresh. Maybe in the future he'll show me he's just as nasty as everyone else, and I'd block him. But as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him off completely. I've also made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teens, and I have my first preliminary visit next week, again funded by my grandma, which makes me feel ever more eager to find a job ASAP to take the burden off of her, even if she tells me time and time again she's happy to do all of this for me. That's where things stand right now. I don't know if I'll update again, maybe when I start classes or move to the apartment, but right now I'm just trying to enjoy some time with my grandma and my uncle and learn to grow and get rid of these feelings of guilt and depression that have been plaguing me for so long. I want to thank once again all of this community for being so nice and helpful to me, and all of you who have messaged me with your own personal stories of getting kicked out or having to learn how to make it on your own at a too early age. You've helped me feel a lot less alone and made me realize that things can get better if I work hard for it. I feel kind of spoiled for having such an amazing support system on my grandma, uncles, and my friend. But you all guys are right. Reaching out has been the absolute best decision I could have taken, and opening up about my feelings to those who love me and to all of you internet friends has absolutely saved me, so thank you. Really, I'm more grateful than words can ever tell. Update 3. Hello Reddit, it's me again with yet another update on the wild ride that is my family life. Things have taken some pretty shocking turns, and honestly, I'm still reeling from the events of the past few weeks. After my last post, I thought maybe, just maybe, my parents would start to show some genuine remorse for how they'd neglected me. But boy, was I wrong. Instead, what I got was a masterclass in manipulation and damage control, and I've got the full story for you here. It started with an invitation to dinner from my parents. They said they wanted to make things right and heal as a family. Given everything that's happened, I was skeptical, but I agreed to go, hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. We met at a high-end restaurant, the kind where you feel like you have to dress up just to fit in. From the moment I walked in, I could tell something was off. My parents were unusually affectionate, showering me with hugs and loud declarations of their love. It felt like we were actors in some cheesy family drama. The dinner itself was even more over the top. My parents were piling on the apologies and laying out their plans for the future, including a college fund they suddenly set up in my name and a belated celebration party just for me. All of this in front of an audience that included a couple of local influencers known for their community gossip blogs. The pieces clicked together. This was a PR stunt, not a heartfelt reunion. As we ate, they kept up their act, talking about how much they'd learned and how they were committed to being better parents. I played along, but my gut was churning with the realization that this was all for show. The real confirmation came as we were leaving when I overheard my mom whisper to my dad, "That should fix our image." It was all I needed to hear to know that their apologies were just smoke and mirrors. I left the restaurant feeling used and angry. I couldn't believe they would go to such lengths just to save face. On the drive home with my grandma, who I had called to pick me up, I told her everything. She was furious but supported my decision to finally cut ties. That night I lay awake, thinking about everything that had happened. It became clear to me that if I wanted to stop this cycle, I needed to stand up and expose their behavior, not just privately but publicly. The next morning, I drafted a long post detailing the entire dinner charade, the overheard conversation, and my decision to distance myself from their manipulative tactics. I posted it online, and the response was overwhelming. My story resonated with many, and my inbox was flooded with messages of support and similar stories of family manipulation. It was both heartbreaking and affirming to see how many people understood my situation. Emboldened by the support, I decided it was time to make some big changes in my life. First, I focused on securing my financial independence. I met with a financial advisor to understand my options for college funding beyond the so-called fund my parents set up. I applied for scholarships and grants, determined to pay for my education on my own terms. Simultaneously, my friend and I accelerated our apartment search. We found a small but comfortable place in a good neighborhood that was within our budget. We moved in together, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace and stability. To further my independence, I also started a part-time job at a local bookstore. It wasn't much, but it helped cover my share of the rent and other expenses. It also gave me a sense of normalcy and routine, which I desperately needed. Amidst these changes, I continued my therapy sessions, which have been instrumental in helping me process everything and plan for a healthier future. My therapist supported my decision to distance myself from my parents and helped me develop strategies for maintaining boundaries. As I settled into my new life, I realized that the freedom I felt was worth all the hardship. I was finally making decisions for myself, without being swayed by my parents' manipulative tactics. So, Reddit, here I am, living my best life on my terms. I've learned that sometimes cutting toxic ties is necessary for personal growth, and while it's not easy, it's worth it. Thanks for all your support and advice. It's made all the difference. I'll keep you updated as I navigate this new chapter, but for now, I'm just enjoying the peace that comes with being in control of my own story. So, am I the a-hole for going public and cutting off my parents financially and emotionally? I think not, but let me know what you think. Your input has been invaluable. Update 4. Since my last post, where I thought I was finally starting to get my life on track, things took a dramatic turn. Remember how my parents were all about public image due to their business? Well, it turns out their desperation to protect that image has led them to take some extreme steps. A few days ago, I received a legal notice. My parents are suing me for defamation, claiming my posts have severely damaged their personal and professional reputation, which is closely tied to their family-oriented business. The kicker? They're not only demanding a retraction and apology, but also pressing for damages that are frankly astronomical. I was shell-shocked. Legal battles were the last thing I needed. I immediately called my grandma, who has always been my rock. After calming me down, she sprang into action and got in touch with a lawyer to help me handle the situation. Turns out, she's also decided to support me through college independently, wanting to ensure that whatever happens, my education won't be disrupted. The past few weeks have been a blur of lawyer meetings, gathering evidence, and trying to balance work and studies. My life feels like it's split between trying to maintain normalcy and preparing for a courtroom drama I never asked for. The legal advice I've received has been reassuring, though. My lawyer believes that since my posts were based on factual experiences and shared without malicious intent, we have a strong defense against the defamation claims. Still, the stress of knowing I'm being sued by my own parents is overwhelming. As if the lawsuit wasn't enough, I've started noticing the ripple effects. Their business is suffering, not just from my posts, but from their own actions being brought to light. Clients and partners don't want to associate with the controversy, and it's spiraling. I hear about it not just from the legal side, but from old family friends who are suddenly in the middle, some siding with me, others with my parents. Through all this, community support has been my lifeline. After sharing about the lawsuit, the response was massive. Messages of solidarity, advice, and even offers of financial help with legal costs have poured in. It's shown me how powerful honest sharing can be, and how many people are willing to stand up against what they see as injustice. On a more personal note, this situation has strangely brought my brother and me closer together. He's been a surprising source of support, expressing his own frustrations with our parents' choices. We've been talking a lot more, and he's helped me feel less alone in all this. Despite the chaos, I'm trying to focus on my studies and the support systems I still have. My grandma's unwavering support, especially her stepping in to cover my college expenses, has been my anchor through this storm. I'm also finding strength in advocacy, sharing my story not just online, but in speaking engagements and panels about family dynamics and legal intimidation. So, Reddit, here I am, caught between fighting a legal battle and trying to move forward with my life. Am I the a-hole for continuing to stand my ground against my parents' lawsuit, despite the turmoil it's causing in their lives and business? Your thoughts and support have been invaluable so far, and I'm more grateful than ever for this community.